From the moment Emily Harris set foot in Lincoln High, something in her gut told her this move would be different. It wasn't just the early morning mist that clung to the sidewalks or the unfamiliar smell of maple trees hanging in the fall air. It was the way people looked at her, like she didn't belong. At 16, she had already changed schools 4 times in 3 years, each one starting the same. Her mom with a new job, her with a new uniform, and a silent promise to not stand out. She kept her head low, hair tied back, wearing neutral clothes that made her almost invisible. That first day, she tried to move like a shadow, unnoticed and unbothered. But inside, Emily carried something no one in that sleepy Ohio town could see. Years of hard-earned skill, discipline, and a quiet storm waiting to erupt. Back in Detroit, everyone knew not to mess with her. She was the junior state champion in mixed martial arts, trained under some of the toughest coaches in Michigan. But here, in Maplewood, she was just another new girl. Her mother, exhausted from years of packing boxes and goodbyes, had asked her to keep her skills under wraps. "Let's start fresh, sweetheart," she had said, her eyes pleading. "I just want you to be safe. No more fights, no more attention." Emily had nodded, but her silence wasn't weakness. It was a ticking clock. It didn't take long for trouble to find her. Lunchtime came, and Emily chose the farthest table in the cafeteria, trying to eat her sandwich in peace. That's when Brad Thompson made his entrance. Tall, loud, and surrounded by the kind of boys who thought the school belonged to them. He dropped into the seat across from her without invitation, his buddies Kyle and Jake flanking him like bodyguards. "Hey, new girl," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Name's Brad. This is my school, my rules." Emily glanced up, meeting his gaze with a steady calm. "Nice to meet you. I'm Emily," she said, returning to her sandwich. Her voice was soft, even kind. But Brad wasn't interested in kindness. "Where are you from?" he asked, already smirking. "Detroit," she replied. That was enough. Kyle laughed like she had just said something ridiculous. "Big city girl, huh? Think you're better than us?" Emily didn't flinch. "I don't think that," she said simply. But Brad leaned in, tone dropping. "See, we've got a system here. You're new. That means you show respect. And around here, that looks like $5 a day for protection." The audacity of it was staggering. Emily stared at them, recognizing the dynamic immediately. The predator assuming the prey would cower. She felt that old instinct rise, the itch in her knuckles, the pulse of adrenaline begging for release. But she breathed deeply, remembering her promise. "I'll think about it," she said evenly. Brad grinned, thinking he'd won. Emily walked home that day with her mind racing, the chilly wind doing nothing to cool the slow burn inside her chest. $5 a day. Might not sound like much, but she'd done the math before she even left the cafeteria. $25 a week, $100 a month, over $1,000 a year. And that was only the beginning. Boys like Brad didn't stop once they had a foot in the door. She'd seen it before, how one concession turned into complete control. Back in Detroit, she would have ended it before it even started. But this time was different. This time she had made a promise. Still, the thought of handing over cash to someone like him boiled her. Blood. At home, her mom was in the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, pretending everything was normal. "How was your first day, sweetheart?" she asked, smiling tiredly as she stirred a pot on the stove. "It was fine," Emily lied, brushing past the conversation. The truth clung to her throat, but she swallowed it. Her mom had sacrificed so much for this new start. Emily didn't want to disappoint her. Not again. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, fists clenched beneath the blanket. She replayed Brad's smug face in her mind, the way he spoke to her like she was already beaten. She had the skills to make sure he never tried anything like that again. But what would that do to her mother? What would people say? Would anyone even believe her side of the story? The next morning, the air at school felt heavier, thicker, like the tension had seeped into the walls overnight. Emily had barely made it to her locker when Brad and his crew found her again. This time there were no pleasantries. "So," Brad said, stepping in front of her with that same smirk, "you make a decision yet?" Emily stood tall, eyes locked on his. "I'm not paying you," she said calmly. The smirk vanished. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice dropping. "I said no," she repeated louder this time. The hallway seemed to go still for a second, as if the entire school held its breath. Brad laughed, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of laugh that tried to cover up anger and surprise. You want to be a hero? Fine, let's see how long that lasts. What followed wasn't a punch or a shove. It was something worse. A campaign. In chemistry class, Kyle accidentally knocked her books to the floor, stepping on her notebook as she bent to pick it up. In the hallway, Jake shouldered her into a locker hard enough to make her arm throb. "Watch where you're going," he barked before disappearing into the crowd. By lunchtime, Emily was back at her corner table, but this time the cafeteria was watching. Brad returned, not with just his two friends, but with half the football team trailing behind him. He made a show of it, announcing to everyone within earshot that the new girl didn't respect tradition, then picking up her tray and dumping the contents in her lap. Hot soup spilled down her jeans. The room erupted in laughter. Phones came out. Emily didn't move. Emily sat there, soup dripping from her clothes. Her fingers clenched so tight around the edge of the bench that her knuckles turned white. Around her, laughter echoed like gunfire, cruel and relentless. Someone shouted, "Soup girl!" and a new round of giggles erupted. But she didn't flinch. Her face remained unreadable, her eyes fixed on Brad like she was seeing straight through him. Inside, something old and powerful stirred. Not rage, not humiliation, but clarity. She stood up slowly, her legs steady, despite the heat and the stench clinging to her. Brad looked amused, ready to push her further. "You made a mistake," she said, her voice slicing through the noise. Calm, deliberate. "Oh yeah?" Brad scoffed. "What are you gonna do? Cry? Run to the principal?" Emily didn't answer. She picked up her backpack and walked out, soup still soaking her jeans, leaving behind a stunned silence. In the girls' bathroom, she scrubbed at the stains with shaking hands. But the tremble wasn't from fear. It was the force she was holding back. 4 years of training had taught her to control it, to channel it. But every muscle in her body screamed for action. She didn't want to break her promise to her mom. But there was a limit, and Brad had just crossed it. That afternoon, instead of going straight home, Emily walked to a quiet corner of the school's library and pulled out her phone. She hadn't used the number in months, but it was still saved. Master Johnson, the man who had trained her since she was a skinny, bruised 12-year-old. He answered on the third ring. "Emily?" he asked, voice warm but alert. "Is everything okay?" She hesitated for just a second. "Not really. I've got a problem with some local bullies." There was a pause on the line, not surprise but concern. "You been keeping your promise?" "I tried," she said. "I really did." Emily gave him the short version. The threats, the cafeteria, the humiliation. When she finished, Master Johnson sighed. "You know what I always told you. Skill without judgment is a weapon. But when judgment fails, you use it. The smart way. Quiet, clean, no showboating, and no broken bones." Emily nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I remember." "Then listen, girl. If you choose to act, make sure there's no one around, no witnesses, and no regrets." That night, Emily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, her fists were steady. She had made her decision. Tomorrow, Brad Thompson was going to learn exactly who he'd picked a fight with. Tuesday afternoon, the school had thinned out. Most students had gone home, and the parking lot sat in a quiet lull. Emily waited. She knew Brad stayed late for football practice, and she wanted to catch him alone. No crowd, no phones, no audience to twist the narrative. She stayed in the library until the sun dipped low, then slipped out and walked to the athletic building. From a window, she spotted him leaving the gym alone, backpack slung over one shoulder, still full of swagger. "Perfect." "Brad?" she called out as she stepped into view. He turned, surprised for a second. Then his expression shifted into that familiar smirk. "Well, look who it is. Soup Girl's back for seconds." Emily didn't blink. She kept walking until she stood just a few feet away. The air was cool, almost sharp with early autumn. "We need to talk," she said simply. "Talk?" Brad laughed. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" Emily didn't rise to the bait. "About what happened in the cafeteria, about this whole thing." Brad rolled his eyes, stepping closer. He was huge compared to her, over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered from years of lifting. "Listen, little girl," he growled. "You had a chance. I gave you an easy out. Now it's gonna be the hard way." He leaned in, voice dripping with contempt. Tomorrow the whole school's gonna know what a joke you are. I've got people posting clips already. #SoupGirl. You're done." Emily's face remained unreadable. She let him finish, then spoke with the same quiet confidence she'd always carried in the ring. "I have a proposition," she said. Brad raised an eyebrow, caught off guard by her tone. "A proposition? You don't get to make offers, sweetheart. One-on-one, right here, right now," Emily said. "If you win, I'll pay you $10 a day. I'll do whatever you want. But if I win, you leave me alone, forever. And you apologize, publicly, for what you did." Brad blinked, then burst out laughing. "You want to fight me?" He snorted. "You know how much I bench? You know who my coach is?" He looked her up and down like she was some kind of joke. "You look like a stiff breeze could knock you over." Emily tilted her head. "Then you've got nothing to be afraid of." Something in her voice, not anger, but certainty, made him pause. She didn't look scared, not even close. After a moment, Brad rolled his shoulders and shrugged out of his hoodie. "No rules," he said. "Anything goes." "Agreed," she replied, stepping into the empty lot. It was just the two of them now, surrounded by silence. No crowd. No noise. Just pavement, fading light, and a storm about to break. Brad moved first, cocky and overconfident. He lunged at her like a linebacker, fists clenched, aiming to end the fight with one blow. His right arm swung toward her face, fast, full of brute strength. But strength without control is nothing. Emily didn't even flinch. With a quick pivot, she stepped just out of the punch's path, letting it slice through air. In the same motion, her right forearm rose, deflecting the momentum, and then, with terrifying precision, her left hand shot forward, slamming into his solar plexus like a piston. The punch was clean, perfectly placed, and devastating. Brad doubled over mid-stride, the air knocked violently from his lungs. He stumbled back, gasping like he was drowning, eyes wide with disbelief. His body wanted to breathe, but his diaphragm refused to obey. Panic overtook him. For the first time in his life, Brad Thompson had no control. He collapsed to his knees, staring up at Emily like he was seeing her for the first time. She stood calm, arms loose at her sides, like nothing had happened. No fury, no flash, just focus. "First rule of fighting," Emily said quietly, her voice steady, almost gentle. "Never underestimate your opponent." Brad tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He was still wheezing, his arms trembling as he braced himself against the pavement. You box?" he choked out. Emily crouched down so their eyes were level. "Not boxing. Mixed martial arts. 4 years. Junior state champion of Michigan. 23 fights. 21 wins." Brad's pupils dilated with pure fear, but Emily wasn't gloating. She was just stating facts. "And the scariest part," she added, "that punch? It wasn't even 10% of what I'm capable of. If I wanted to, your ribs would be cracked. Your spine could have been hit." She stood up, giving him space to breathe. Brad managed to pull himself upright, one arm clutching his gut. His entire demeanor changed. The arrogance was gone. What remained was the realization that he had crossed a line he didn't even know existed. Emily looked at him, not with hatred, but with something closer to pity. "I didn't move here to fight. I didn't want to stand out. I wanted a normal life, but you didn't give me that choice." Her voice cooled. "Now I'm giving you one." Brad's breathing was shallow, each inhale sharp and hesitant. The power dynamic had flipped so completely, so suddenly, that he couldn't process it. Just minutes ago, he'd been confident, towering over her, certain that Emily was just another girl he could push around. Now he stood there, humbled, shaken, and barely able to meet her gaze. Emily took a slow step forward. "You can either keep your word," she said, "leave me alone, and apologize in front of everyone. Or," she paused, her tone low but unmistakably firm, "I'll show the entire school what I did to you with cameras rolling." Brad blinked, horrified. His football reputation, his dominance at school, all of it could be crushed by one video, one post. "You think your friends will follow a captain who got floored in 30 seconds? She added. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. She could already see it in his posture, the slump of defeat. "All right," he muttered finally. "I'll do it." Emily nodded. Smart choice. She turned to walk away, but then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "And Brad, if you or any of your friends mess with me again, or anyone else in this school, I'll know, and next time, I won't be this nice." With that, she left him standing in the middle of the empty lot, the chill of evening settling in around him, clutching his ribs, and realizing the empire he thought he ruled had just crumbled beneath his feet. The next morning, the atmosphere at Lincoln High was electric. Rumors had spread like wildfire. Some students whispered that Brad had been jumped. Others said he'd gotten into a fight with someone from another school. But no one expected what actually happened. During the passing period before lunch, Brad Thompson, bruised but upright, walked straight up to Emily in the crowded hallway. Conversations froze. Heads turned. "Emily," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, his voice stripped of arrogance. "I'm sorry for everything. What I did in the cafeteria was wrong. I was a jerk." A stunned silence fell over the hallway. Emily simply nodded. "Thank you, Brad. I accept your apology." And just like that, everything shifted. The power balance that had long favored the loudest, most aggressive kids at school was gone. For the first time, students began to see something different in Emily. Not just strength, but presence. After that moment, Brad and his crew didn't just stop bothering her. They changed. Completely. If anything, they acted like her silent bodyguards. When someone tried to pick on a freshman, a single look from Brad was enough to shut it down. And that's when the next surprise came, one that would take Emily's path in a direction she hadn't expected. It happened about a week later. Emily was leaving the library when she was approached by a group of girls, 4 of them, led by Jessica Martin, one of the most popular students in school. Jessica was usually confident, her laugh echoing in the hallways, always surrounded by people. But today her eyes were anxious and her shoulders tense. "Hey, Emily," she said almost nervously. "Can we talk for a sec?" Emily, nodded. Jessica glanced around, then lowered her voice. "We heard about what happened, and there are rumors, like serious ones. Is it true you know how to fight?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Jessica hesitated. "Because we've got a problem. Some guys from West Side. They've been waiting for us at the bus stop after school, saying creepy things, getting too close, and it's getting worse. The teachers say they can't do anything because it's off school property, and if we tell our parents, they'll freak and stop us from going out at all." Emily studied their faces. She could see it. The fear, the helplessness, and something else. Hope. They believed maybe, just maybe, she could help. "Tell me everything," Emily said quietly. And they did, about the way those boys crowded them, about the threats, the grabbing, the growing danger. Emily listened carefully, piecing it together. 5 guys, older, from out of district, using fear as their weapon. She'd seen this pattern before. That afternoon, Emily made a decision. She didn't promise to fight, not yet, but she told Jessica and the others to meet her at the bus stop the next day. "I'll be there," she said. "Let's see what the situation calls for." The next day, she arrived 10 minutes early, backpack slung over her shoulder, a book in her lap she didn't bother to read. She positioned herself on the bench with a clear view of the area. At 3:45, the girls showed up, standing in a tight group, nervously glancing around. Right on cue, the West Side boys arrived. 5 of them, tall, loud, full of swagger. Their leader, a blonde with a neck tattoo, made a beeline for Jessica, grinning like he owned the street. "Look who's back," he said loudly. "Didn't run away fast enough yesterday?" He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. "I missed you." Jessica shrank back, but one of his friends blocked her from stepping away. "Don't be shy, sweetheart," he jeered. That's when Emily stood. She walked up casually, as if nothing unusual was happening. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm. "Could you move? You're blocking the path." The leader turned, annoyed, then confused. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. "Someone who doesn't like what you're doing," Emily replied, her tone steady. The boys exchanged glances, amused. One of them laughed. "Cute," he said. "She wants to play hero." "No," Emily said. "I want you to leave. Now." Travis, that was the leader's name she would learn later, stepped forward, clearly enjoying the attention. He towered over Emily, easily a foot taller, his breath smelling faintly of gum and arrogance. "Listen, little girl," he growled. "You don't know what you're getting into. Walk away before you get hurt." Emily didn't budge. Her stance was neutral, relaxed even, but her eyes, cold and steady, didn't blink. "And what exactly are you going to do to me?" she asked. One of the boys behind her chuckled. "Maybe she likes it rough," he muttered. The others laughed, emboldened. Travis smirked. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Tell you what, why don't you come hang out with us instead? Might be fun." That's when one of them, a stocky boy with a gold tooth, stepped forward and tried to grab Emily's shoulder from behind. It was a mistake he'd regret instantly. In one fluid motion without even turning around, Emily drove her left elbow straight into his solar plexus. The sound he made was more like a wheeze than a cry. He dropped to his knees, gasping, and clutching his stomach, eyes wide with disbelief. The group froze. No one expected that. "What the hell?" Travis began, but Emily was already facing him. There was something in her expression that stopped him cold. Not rage, not even anger, just absolute focus, the kind that belonged to someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. "You've got 2 minutes to leave," she said quietly. "This is the only warning you'll get." For a second, Travis looked confused. Then he laughed. The sound, sharp and ugly. "You've lost your damn mind," he said, stepping in close. "I'll crush you with one." He didn't finish. Emily moved like lightning. 1 second she was standing still, the next she was inside his guard, her fist driving hard into his liver. He folded immediately, breath leaving his body in a violent rush, and then came the finishing blow, a knee straight to the face. His nose crunched audibly. Blood poured out as he crumpled to the pavement. The fight lasted less than 3 seconds. The remaining boys backed away fast, their bravado replaced by pure shock. "Who's next?" Emily asked, turning her gaze on them. No one moved. No one spoke. They'd seen enough. "Wise choice," she said. "Now take your friend and get out of here. And if I ever see you near these girls again, I won't be so gentle." They grabbed Travis and the gasping boy on his knees and stumbled off down the street. Jessica and the others rushed over, stunned. "That was insane," Jessica whispered. "How did you?" Emily just shook her head. "Long story. But don't worry, they won't be back." The next morning, Emily returned to school like nothing had happened, but Lincoln High was buzzing with a different kind of energy. The story of what had gone down at the bus stop spread faster than wildfire. The details changed, depending on who was telling it, but the core stayed the same. The quiet girl from Detroit had taken down 5 guys from another school, and didn't even break a sweat. Some said she was a black belt in karate. Others whispered she used to train with the military. Rumors spun out of control, but Emily stayed silent. She moved through the halls like always, calm and collected, not chasing attention, not correcting anyone. And that's when things shifted. Students didn't avoid her anymore. They approached her. Some just wanted to say hi. Others thanked her for what she'd done, but a growing number of them had a different question entirely. "Can you teach me?" At first, Emily brushed it off. But by the 3rd time someone asked, she realized this wasn't random. It was a need. She met with the school's wrestling coach and asked to use the gym twice a week after class. He agreed without hesitation. Then she posted a handwritten sign by the library. "Self-defense class, open to all, no experience needed." On the first day, 11 kids showed up. The next, over 20. Within 3 weeks, the sessions were packed. She didn't take attendance. She didn't care about uniforms or belts. What mattered was that they came, willing to learn, desperate to feel less powerless. What started as a quiet request for help had become something more, a movement. And Emily, almost without realizing it, had become its center. Emily's self-defense classes weren't about throwing punches or winning fights. Not really. She understood that true strength didn't begin with fists. It started in the mind. So every lesson began with mindset, posture, breathing. She taught them how to read a sounding room, how to de-escalate a tense moment before it exploded, how to walk away when walking away was still an option. And when it wasn't, that's when the real techniques came in. Fast, effective, and rooted in control. Most of her students came with unbruised skin but deeply bruised confidence. They were kids who'd been pushed around, talked over, dismissed. Some had never spoken up in class, never looked people in the eye. Emily saw herself in them. The quiet tension, the tight shoulders, the need to prove something. And slowly, through drills and repetition, she watched them change. Their backs straightened, their hands steadied, their voices grew stronger. It wasn't magic. It was discipline and belief, the kind of belief Emily knew you had to earn, one session at a time. Teachers started noticing. Some stopped by just to watch, clearly impressed. One afternoon, Principal Anderson asked to speak with her. "You're doing something special," he said. "These kids, they're different, more confident, more present." Emily nodded, not needing to say much. She could feel it too. The school was shifting. It was subtle but powerful. Fear was being replaced by something new, solidarity. And she knew deep down that this, more than any tournament win or medal, was what she had trained for. Not to fight, but to make sure others never had to feel small again. It didn't take long for word to spread beyond the school walls. A few local parents began stopping Emily in the parking lot, asking if their kids could join the sessions too. Some weren't even students, just siblings or neighbors who'd heard stories. Emily never turned anyone away. She adjusted her lessons, broke them down into beginner-friendly drills, and taught with patience and a calm authority that made everyone feel safe. Eventually, even a few teachers started attending. At first, they came to observe. Then they stayed to learn. The gym, once just a training space, transformed into something more. A community. Emily didn't care about belts or ranks. Her focus was clear: to give people the tools to stand up for themselves and, just as importantly, to stand up for others. She drilled the same message in every class. The best fight is the one you don't have to fight. But if it comes, you finish it fast, clean, and without cruelty. That balance, strength with compassion, was what made her students respect her so deeply. Even those who once saw her as a curiosity now looked at her with genuine admiration. The school principal, Mr. Anderson, brought it up in a staff meeting. "She's changing the culture," he told his faculty. "What she's building goes beyond physical defense. It's confidence, it's leadership, it's accountability." The school board took notice too, eventually approving a small budget for new mats, gloves, and protective gear. But Emily didn't do it for the gear. Every time she stepped into that gym, it wasn't about building fighters. It was about building people who would never again feel helpless. And without meaning to, she'd become exactly what she never expected to be: a leader. About a month after the incident with the West Side boys, something happened that pushed Emily's name far beyond Lincoln High. A regional martial arts federation came to town to host a public exhibition and talent scouting event. Flyers went up across the community, and many of Emily's classmates planned to attend. Emily didn't have any intention of participating. She'd gone just to watch with Jessica and a few others, curious to see some real fighters in action. But when the announcer called for an open ring, anyone who wanted to demonstrate their skills, something unexpected happened. Her classmates began chanting her name. "Emily! Emily! Emily!" It started small, then grew louder. One of the event organizers, a retired fighter named Mike Rotner, asked someone nearby what was going on. "They want one of their own to fight," someone told him. "They say she's a champion." Curious, Rotner asked to meet her. When he saw Emily, small, in a hoodie and jeans, he looked skeptical. "You really a fighter?" he asked. Emily nodded calmly. "Michigan State Junior Champion," she said. "Mixed martial arts, 57 kilos. That got his attention. They arranged a light sparring match with another girl around her size, a 20-year-old up-and-comer with a few amateur fights under her belt. Protective gear only, no strikes to the head. Emily agreed. A few minutes later, she stood in the ring, helmet on, gloves secured, her classmates cheering from the stands. As she faced off against her opponent, the world faded. The lights, the crowd, the pressure, none of it mattered. Her breathing slowed. Her focus locked in. The girl across from her had height, reach, experience, but she didn't have Emily's control, and that made all the difference. The moment the referee signaled to begin, the crowd hushed. Emily didn't rush. She moved with purpose, reading her opponent's stance, gauging her speed. The other girl, Kelly Rose, started cautiously. A few light jabs to test Emily's reactions. Emily blocked them effortlessly, her body relaxed, movements sharp but fluid. She didn't strike first. She waited. Kelly, clearly experienced, increased her aggression. A left jab, a right cross, then a swift kick aimed at Emily's ribs. It was a clean combo, fast and well-timed. But Emily had trained for years with fighters far more brutal. She slipped. The punches caught the kick mid-air, and used the momentum to sweep Kelly's standing leg from under her. The crowd gasped as Kelly hit the mat with a thud. Without hesitation, Emily dropped into a grappling position and secured a textbook chokehold. Kelly squirmed, tried to break free, but Emily's grip was flawless. Within seconds, Kelly tapped out. The referee called the match and the gym exploded with applause. Emily stood up, offered a hand to her opponent, and helped her up. There was no celebration, no showboating, just respect. Her classmates cheered like they'd just watched a professional title fight. Mike Rotner approached the ring, visibly impressed. "Where did you train?" he asked. "Master Johnson's gym, Detroit," Emily answered, her voice as calm as ever. Rotner nodded. "I know him. He trains champions." Then, after a long pause, he added, "You ever think about doing this professionally? You've got something rare." Emily looked at the crowd, at Jessica and the others, her classmates, her friends, her community. "Thanks," she said with a small smile. "But right now, I just want to finish high school." That moment marked a shift. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was someone everyone believed in. Following the exhibition, word about Emily spread beyond the school and local community. The match was recorded on multiple phones and posted online. Within days, the video had thousands of views. Local news stations picked up the story. Teen girl defeats amateur fighter in public exhibition. Reporters started calling the school. A short segment aired on regional television, featuring clips from the match and interviews with excited classmates. But none of the attention changed Emily. She showed up to school the next day like she always did, hoodie zipped, backpack over one shoulder, nodding quietly to the students who now watched her with a mix of awe and admiration. What mattered to Emily wasn't the fame, or the headlines, or the recognition. What mattered was the gym full of students after school, some who had never thrown a punch in their life, standing in a circle, ready to learn. The class had grown to over 50 participants, and Emily now divided them into skill levels. Some days she led warm-ups. Other days she helped individuals work through mental blocks, fears, hesitations. Her goal wasn't to build an army. It was to make sure no one felt small the way she once had. And slowly, the school began to change. Incidents of bullying dropped significantly. Younger students walked with more confidence. Even Brad Thompson, once the school's biggest problem, had started showing up early to help set up mats and clean after class. One afternoon after training, he pulled Emily aside, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I just wanted to say, thanks," he mumbled. "For what?" she asked. "For stopping me before I became someone worse." Emily smiled softly. "We all make mistakes, Brad. What matters is what you do." "Next." He nodded sincerely. He knew she meant it. By early November, just as the leaves turned brittle and the mornings started arriving with frost, the school community was rocked by news that hit closer than anyone expected. Travis Miller, the same guy Emily had dropped at the bus stop, had been arrested for assaulting a girl from another district. This time, it wasn't just harassment. He had gone too far, and there was no denying it. The charges were serious. But Travis came from a well-connected family. His father, a wealthy businessman with political aspirations, quickly moved to protect his son. The best lawyers money could buy were hired, and within a week, their legal team was already working to shift the narrative. That's when Emily's name came up again. In a shocking twist, Travis's lawyers filed a motion claiming that the altercation at the bus stop had psychologically destabilized him, pushing him into a pattern of reckless behavior. They labeled Emily a violent teen with a history of aggression, painting her as partially responsible for what happened later. It was absurd, but dangerously strategic. Suddenly, Emily, who had become a symbol of strength and protection, was being pulled into a legal firestorm. Local news stations aired interviews with the Miller family's attorney, carefully dancing around the idea that Emily's earlier attack had triggered Travis's spiral. Emily's mother, Sarah, was furious but composed. She told Emily they could leave, start over in another town, another school. "No," Emily said, standing her ground. "We've done nothing wrong. I'm not running from this." It was the first time Sarah truly saw the woman her daughter was becoming, steady, unshaken, and unafraid to fight for what mattered. A court date was set for 2 months later, and Emily knew that everything she'd built, everything she stood for, would be put on trial. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Emily prepared herself not with physical training, but with patience and honesty. She met with her lawyer, reviewed every detail of what had happened at the bus stop, and helped gather witnesses. Word of the legal battle spread, and the support from Lincoln High was overwhelming. Jessica and the other girls from that afternoon insisted on testifying. So did a handful of bystanders who'd witnessed the confrontation and understood exactly what had gone down. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Students, parents, and even some teachers filled the benches, all there to support Emily. Travis's lawyer opened with a dramatic speech, painting his client as a troubled boy who'd made one mistake too many. He described the bus stop incident as a humiliation that had fractured Travis's sense of identity, as if Emily's refusal to be bullied had somehow broken the boy. Emily's lawyer calmly rebutted, focusing on the facts. When Jessica took the stand, her voice trembled at first, but she grew stronger with every sentence. "We were scared," she said. "They harassed us. They said disgusting things. And when Emily stepped in, they tried to grab her. She did what she had to do to protect us." Other witnesses backed the same version. No embellishments, just truth. Finally, it was Emily's turn. She stood, not as a fighter, not as a symbol, but simply as herself. She spoke clearly about her training, about restraint, about responsibility. "My coach taught me that strength isn't about hurting people. It's about knowing when not to," she said. When asked why she didn't run, her answer was simple. "Because there were girls behind me who couldn't run. Someone had to stop them." Her words landed with weight. No theatrics, just truth. The courtroom was silent when Emily finished her testimony. Even Travis's lawyer, who had paced with practiced confidence during the cross-examination, seemed momentarily thrown off by her calm, unwavering answers. He tried to paint her as impulsive, maybe even aggressive. "You admit you struck my client?" he asked, leaning forward. "Yes," Emily answered plainly. "And it was a strong hit, was it not?" "Strong enough to stop him," she replied, "but not to injure him permanently." "You didn't consider walking away?" the lawyer pressed. Emily met his gaze without blinking. "And leave the girls behind? Let them think they had no protection?" "No. I did what I was trained to do. I assessed the threat and neutralized it." She didn't raise her voice once. There was no anger, no frustration, only clarity. It was that calm, that restraint, that made people really listen. By the time the lawyers gave their final arguments, the mood in the room had shifted. The crowd wasn't just on Emily's side. They admired her. The jury took less than 30 minutes to return with a verdict. Not guilty on all counts. A wave of relief swept through the room. Sarah clutched her daughter in a tight embrace, tears running down her cheeks. Students who had once only watched Emily from a distance rushed to thank her. Even the judge, as he brought the session to a close, nodded in her direction and said, "We need more people like you." Emily didn't celebrate. She just exhaled deeply. Not because she had won, but because truth had. What mattered now wasn't vindication. It was what came next. The question that lingered wasn't, what happens to Travis? It was, what will Emily do with the voice and strength she now knew she had? Life returned to a new kind of normal after the trial. The media attention faded. Reporters stopped camping outside her house, and students at Lincoln High no longer whispered when Emily walked by. They simply nodded, smiled, or asked when the next self-defense class would be. But something deeper had shifted in the community. What had started as one girl standing up to a bully had evolved into a culture of accountability and support. The administration officially added Emily's self-defense program to the school's physical education curriculum. They gave her a designated space in the gym, and even brought in professional trainers to assist. Though Emily remained the face and heart of the program, she didn't just teach holds, blocks, and strikes. She taught confidence, awareness, and empathy. She explained how to recognize when someone else was in trouble, how to de-escalate a threat before it became a fight, and how to carry yourself in a way that said, "I'm not afraid of you." Parents began attending classes. So did local community members. Teachers who had once been skeptical now praised her in staff meetings. Mr. Anderson, the principal, often stopped by the gym after school just to watch. "This is more than a class," he said one afternoon. "It's a movement." Emily would nod, quietly proud. She didn't need titles or awards. What mattered was watching a shy freshman girl hold her ground for the first time, or a nervous boy learned to lift his chin and speak with confidence. That was the reward. That was the change. Emily had become, more than a student. She was a mentor, a protector, and for many, a symbol that you didn't need to be big to be strong or loud to be heard. You just had to believe in yourself and act. A few months after the trial, Emily received a letter that would stay with her for the rest of her life. It came in a plain white envelope, handwritten, with no return address beyond Texas. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper and the neat handwriting of a 14-year-old girl. "Dear Emily," it began. "My name is Maria. I wanted to tell you my story. I've always been chubby and awkward, and at school they teased me all the time. I used to cry and run away. I thought I was just weak, but then I read about you. I saw the video, the one where you helped those girls, and something changed. I signed up for karate at a small local gym. At first I was scared. I cried the first week. I didn't think I could do it, but then I remembered your face, how calm you were, how you didn't flinch, and I kept going. Last week something happened. The older boys tried to tease me again, but this time I didn't cry. I stood up straight and looked them in the eyes. I said, 'Leave me alone,' and they did. Thank you for showing me that anyone can be strong. Your grateful fan, Maria." Emily read the letter 3 times, then placed it in a small wooden box she kept under her bed. It wasn't the first message she'd received, but something about Maria's words hit different. The vulnerability, the transformation, the simple power of standing tall. That night she sat by the window, staring at the stars, thinking about how far she'd come since her first day at Lincoln High. All the fear, the humiliation, the restraint, none of it had been wasted. It had led to this, to kids like Maria, to something bigger than herself. By the time Emily reached her final semester at Lincoln High, she had stopped being the girl who fought Brad or the girl from Detroit. She was simply Emily, student council president, head of the honor court, and unofficial guardian of the school's spirit. The honor court had been her idea, a student-led group that would handle conflicts between classmates, not with punishments, but through dialogue, mediation, and understanding. The goal, she told the students, isn't to punish bullies. It's to show them why their actions hurt people, and to give them a real chance to change. The system worked. Fights became rare. Even heated arguments in hallways were often redirected by a peer calmly saying, "Let's talk about this in the court." Teachers marveled at the atmosphere. For the first time in years, Lincoln High felt like a place where students looked out for each other, not just in words, but in action. And through it all, Emily remained the same. She didn't seek praise. She didn't sit on a pedestal. She trained with her classmates, helped freshmen with math homework, stayed late to clean the gym. She was respected because she never asked to be. She earned it. In the final months before graduation, the school hosted a student leadership conference, and Emily was asked to speak. Standing at the podium in the auditorium, she looked out at the sea of faces, some eager, some nervous, all listening. "I used to think the best way to survive school was to be invisible," she began. "But I was wrong. You don't survive by hiding who you are. You survive by standing up, for yourself, for others. And when you do that, you don't just survive, you lead." The crowd didn't just applaud, they stood. Graduation day came with the kind of clarity Emily hadn't expected. The gymnasium was packed, students in robes, families with cameras, teachers seated in neat rows. The same space where she had once quietly cleaned mats after practice was now filled with banners and the hum of hope. When her name was called as valedictorian, the crowd erupted in cheers, but Emily walked to the stage with the same calm grace she always carried. She adjusted the microphone, cleared her throat, and looked out at her classmates. "4 years ago, I walked into this school hoping not to be noticed," she began. "I thought if I stayed quiet, if I kept my head down, I could avoid trouble. I was wrong." She paused, letting the silence settle. "Trouble found me anyway. But what I learned is that trouble isn't the problem. The problem is when no one stands up, when we look the other way, when we let fear speak louder than our values." The room was completely still, every pair of eyes locked on her. "We all have a moment," she continued, "where we have to decide. Will I be the person who steps forward or the one who steps aside?" Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. For me, that moment changed everything. It wasn't easy, but it gave me strength. It gave me purpose. And it showed me that being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means acting anyway. She held up her diploma. This paper says we're done, but I think we're just beginning. So whatever you do next, don't hide. Don't wait for someone else. Be the person who acts. When she stepped back, the applause was thunderous. Not because she had said something perfect, but because it was true. After the ceremony, students, parents, and teachers surrounded her. Brad, now applying to study social work, waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. He looked different, not just older, but lighter, like someone who had shed a layer of anger he didn't need anymore. "Emily," he said, smiling sheepishly, "I just wanted to say thank you again for not, breaking my face that day." Emily laughed. It was tempting. He chuckled, then turned serious. "But really, thank you for stopping me before I became someone I couldn't come back from. If you hadn't called me out, I think I'd still be that guy. And that guy, he was a mess." Emily nodded, understanding. "Everyone gets lost sometimes, Brad. The important thing is finding your way back." They stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Brad added, "You ever think maybe you were supposed to come here, like we needed you?" Emily looked around, at her classmates, her teachers, the gym, the school that had once felt like enemy territory and now felt like home. "Maybe I did," she said. "Maybe we all end up exactly where we're needed." That night at home, she packed her things for college. She was still deciding between Chicago and New York. Both schools had offered her spots, both with strong psychology and sports medicine programs. But the location didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she was ready. She had become more than a fighter, more than a protector. She had become someone who believed, not just in her own strength, but in everyone's potential to grow. Her mom knocked on the door softly. "How are you feeling?" "Good," Emily replied, a smile tugging at the edge of her mouth. "Like I'm ready for whatever's next." The next morning, the train station was full, not just with her mother, but with nearly half the town. Students she'd trained, parents she'd helped, teachers who had once watched her walk through the hallways like a ghost. They were all there. Jessica hugged her tightly, tears running down her cheeks. "Don't forget us," she said. "How could I?" Emily replied, smiling warmly. "You're all part of who I am now." As the train began to board, she looked out one last time at the people who had stood beside her when it mattered most. The same streets that once felt hostile now looked like the roots of something much bigger. She wasn't just leaving Maplewood, she was carrying it with her. In college, Emily majored in psychology, specializing in adolescent development and sports trauma. She joined the university's martial arts team, quickly becoming both a top competitor and an informal coach. But even more than that, she started her own campus self-defense program, this time aimed at empowering female students. It didn't take long for her to become known across campus as someone who not only taught people how to protect themselves, but how to believe in themselves too. Professors invited her to speak in seminars. Local high schools requested guest sessions. Every weekend, Emily was somewhere, sharing her story, teaching what she knew, and listening to others with the same calm, respectful energy she had always carried. Her reputation grew, but fame never interested her. What mattered was the change she saw in her students, the ones who walked in with downcast eyes and left standing straighter, speaking louder, trusting themselves a little more. By the time she turned 26, Emily had launched her own nonprofit center dedicated to youth leadership and self-defense. It started in a modest building with peeling paint and a rented mat in the back room. But kids came, lots of them, from nearby schools, small towns, even different counties. Some were quiet, some were angry, some were just lost, but all of them were looking for the same thing, a way to feel strong without becoming hard. Emily offered them what she had once been desperate for, someone to believe in them. Over the years, her center grew into one of the most respected programs in the region. Some of her earliest students went on to open their own branches in other towns, creating a growing network of young people teaching other young people. She was invited to speak at conferences, advise school districts, and help design national programs on bullying prevention and confidence building. But once a year, no matter how busy her schedule got, Emily returned to Maplewood. She ran a free workshop at Lincoln High, spoke to current students, and met up with old friends. One year, the school added her photo to the main hallway. Underneath it, a small plaque read, Emily Harris, class of 2013. She taught us that strength is not about power, but about the courage to protect. Students would stop in front of it, curious. Who was she? What did she do? And those who knew would smile and say, she changed everything, because she had. One cold spring afternoon, now in her early 30s, Emily sat for an interview with a local newspaper doing a follow-up piece on her work. The journalist asked, "Do you ever think back to that day? The soup, the cafeteria, Brad?" Emily laughed. "More often than you'd think." The interviewer smiled. "Do you regret not keeping your skills hidden? Wouldn't your high school years have been easier?" Emily paused, thoughtful. "I think I spent a long time trying to be someone I wasn't," she said. "I thought if I made myself smaller, life would be smoother. But it didn't work. The truth always finds you, and if you keep hiding it, one day it explodes." She looked out the window, watching a group of kids laughing as they crossed the street. "Real strength," she continued, "isn't about fighting. It's about knowing who you are and being brave enough to live like it. It's about protecting others, not with your fists, but with your presence, your choices, your voice." The article went viral within days. Letters came in from across the country, teenagers, teachers, even parents, thanking her for putting into words what so many had felt, that being strong didn't mean being violent, that you could be kind and powerful at the same time, that bravery wasn't loud or flashy, it was steady, honest, and rooted in truth. Years passed. Emily became a trusted voice in her field, a mentor to hundreds, a role model to thousands. But she never let it go to her head. She still answered her emails personally, still led training sessions when she could, still listened more than she spoke. On the wall of her office was a framed copy of Maria's letter, the girl from Texas who once stood up to bullies after taking her first karate class. It reminded Emily why she started, why she kept going, and why, no matter how much the world changed, some things, like standing up for what's right, never go out of style. She never became famous in the traditional sense. She didn't crave TV deals or bestsellers. But for those who crossed her path, she became unforgettable, because she showed them that even the quietest person could change the world, that you didn't need permission to be brave, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop pretending you're not. Emily's story didn't end with graduation. It didn't end with the trial or the awards or the center she built. It continued every time someone decided they wouldn't be afraid anymore. Every time a kid looked in the mirror and said, "I can do this." Because once a girl in a cafeteria stood up, soup dripping from her jeans, and said quietly, "You just made a big mistake," and everything changed.